as meeting those 3 criteria. That made me feel very good. I left. But then I said, I'm going to meet with Gary Sutherland. He's the head of OCE, Office of Correctional Education. I met with him. He gave me an opportunity to explain all of this information to him. At the end of that meeting, he said something to the effect similar, very similar. Lyle, I appreciate you coming, sharing this information. I think I agree with you that you meet the 3 criteria that were established as the foundation of these evaluations of programs. Thanks for coming. So I left there and kind of just feeling bold, I went to Darrell Steinberg's office. I don't know this building. I've never been in here for official business before. I walked in and I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to his chief of staff, which I can't remember her name. She was very accommodating. She listened to me. She looked at all this material. She kept all this material. She said, yeah. She sent me to another lady, the Public Safety Committee, and again, I didn't bring this information with me today. I went downstairs, met with her. It was on the other side of the aisle, but she was very accommodating. Darrell Steinberg's chief of staff sent an email to Elizabeth Siggins, and I have also met with Elizabeth Siggins on a couple of occasions and have had the opportunity. She's been very accommodating to me. I must admit that. She has looked at this information. She's looked at all of this information. But to you, sir, and to all of you here, none of these people have said, in fact, Elizabeth Siggins earlier to you said, I think she alluded to the fact that, yes, maybe some of the vocational programs have established that they meet all 3 of the criterion, that maybe we were wrong. But she said that just means that maybe we have to make cuts in other places. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you establish 3 criterion and you don't have the right information to make the right decision, and the correct information comes forward, then the correct decision needs to be made. I would like to leave this information with you.
Yes, of course.
It's at that point to where those of us in the mill and cabinet industry, which I work very closely with my cohorts, we've dedicated ourselves, and as have other vocational instructors and other academic instructors. But if the criterion are met, if all 3 are met, as in other vocational trades that will remain, if vocational mill and cabinet has established that they meet those 3 criteria, they need to be afforded the same level of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. You, sir, have the last word in terms of our public testimony.
3 of these.
First of all, thank you very much for agreeing to hold this hearing. I think you've heard a lot of passion and good research presented, and I think that I really need to honor the most courageous woman in the room, Elizabeth Siggins, for getting between 200 angry correctional educators and you and making her presentation, which it's clear is very painful to her to also have to deliver.
I'd also like to recognize that she has remained and listened to all the testimony.
Whether she's an educator or not, whether she knows the models are going to work or not, we can debate. But the decision that started this process happened in this body. Somehow the legislature voted to cut the heart out of correctional education. And I've been coming to this town as a negotiator, as a activist, as a lobbyist. I'm looking for the person who's willing to own that decision, or the group. I'm looking for the grown-up in Sacramento, because my members, my inmates, my bosses, my friends, the citizens in my town want to know who's doing this. Who possibly could think that this is a good idea? Some of these people know my program. I happen to teach landscape horticulture. I happen to be somewhat known in the community because I've been doing it for 25 years. My students not only learn 5 different trades in my program, all under the umbrella of ornamental horticulture, they also enthusiastically participate in plant propagation for large volumes of native plants that have gone into state parks, national parks, local parks, school campuses, etc. And we get a certain amount of publicity for that. We save the taxpayer money just from that alone. That's our version of cost avoidance, as Lyle and Cindy have mentioned. That's one of the programs that will be missed not only by me and by my students, but by the other land management agencies and by our warden, who frankly enjoys having some good news to report from prison once in a while. It was debated whether correctional officers are upset and worried about this change. It's debatable whether CCPOA is interested. I have no idea. But I know a lot of correctional officers. Those are my colleagues. I teach outside. I have to work with the cops intimately. Have had to since November 20th, 1984, when I first walked in that place wondering if I could do this job. So we have a mutual respect. We know we have a different job to do. Their job description is to look for the worst in every inmate that comes around ready to possibly challenge him and get over. And my job description is to pretend he has something salvageable in there. We're both right part of the time, we're both wrong part of the time, and we both know it. So we work well as a team. Some of the people that have approached me in the work site most upset about hearing the news that my program will be gone and that I will be gone January 31st are my fellow COs. They have also told me that they have discussed it at their local union meetings as a safety issue. What's it going to be, just cops and robbers? How are we going to earn our money then? Well, they'll have to earn it. But we submit, among all the various other impacts, just the workman's comp claims and the lost time for correctional officer injuries might be enough to offset some of the very short-term, as Cindy pointed out, savings that are being looked at here. So hats off to Elizabeth Siggins for doing a very tough job with the mission she was given. A terrible position to be put in. Hats off to Cindy for making the case she made very well, and the experts who were great. And Lord help us. The history, I've been there 25 years. In the late 70s sometime, this body gave up on the medical model, the so-called treatment model in corrections. It's out of control, crime's out of control, it's not working, it's racially biased. There were a lot of factors that brought the decision to implement determinate sentencing. Along with determinate sentencing came an inmate work and training incentive program, which was just being rolled out when I started. And we took careful records to make sure that inmates would get out on time and not a day too early and not a day too late based on this formula of training and work day for day, commonly known as day for day. That formula has been eroded a few years ago, and it's now to the point with the passage of 18 XXX, Senate Bill 18, that inmates now earn their so-called day-for-day credits for breathing. Well, that may or may not be a bad thing because it's a move toward the sentencing reform that people advocate. I don't know if I advocate it. We hear a lot of political talk about early release. Oh, we can't have early release. We can't have these hardened criminals unloosed, unloosed on our communities. Well, I gave Senator Hollingsworth my definition of early release. We're going to release 40,000 inmates in the next 4 months, with or without legislation. We kicked 10,000 inmates out. So 10,000 inmates leaving this month without the tools to make it, whether it's a literacy deficit or a lack of job skills or just the problem solving and conflict resolution skills that they earn in any program with any reasonable person that's in that culture to counteract the negativity and cynicism that dominates the culture. That's an early release. We're good at early release. We've been doing it for a long time. The system has many factors in it designed to do basically one thing, which is perpetuate the system. If that were our goal, the way we set up sentencing and the way we operate corrections, we would be a spectacular success, wouldn't we? Because we have grown, when I started in the department, from 12 prisons and 25,000 convicts, more or less, given out C numbers, as they're known, to a point where we have 170,000 convicts, 33 prisons, and we've run through the alphabet so many times we have to give double numbers now, double letters in front of the numbers. So it's a giant failure. But that doesn't mean correctional education has failed. I've heard people try to hold us accountable for the 70% recidivism rate. The chaplain mentioned a minute ago, you need to know the numbers of how many people we actually touch in prison. I believe the number is about 14%. The way we are now at our current staffing, we manage to touch about 14% of the population. We can't possibly be filling the need that all the assessments in the world have clearly indicated are needed, from mental health to social adjustment to basic literacy to job skills and all the rest. The need in every soul for art, the arts and corrections. Another piece of the heart going down the road. It's a very, very sad day. I don't know how to advise you to find that $250 million or the $75 million or the $56 million or however much money it is that's going to keep things more or less the way they are, but I urge you to do it somehow. One of the experts mentioned that it won't take that many years, 5, maybe 10 if we're really slow, to realize we made a mistake. I have a large greenhouse at Correctional Training Facility South that was purchased with state funds, and I have another large greenhouse almost as big that was donated to me through my community connections. But in 5 years from now, will they be bulldozed? Will they be gone? When somebody decides, oh, let's teach horticulture in prison. It's a great idea. It's very therapeutic, and there's a lot of jobs out there, and you know, we used to do it a long time ago. Will we be up here asking for money to build greenhouses, buy new equipment, find some shop space? What a shame. We have all these shops. We have all this equipment. Lyle and I look around the state. What are they going to do with all this infrastructure that's been built and this equipment? Throw it away over some concept, over some model, some analysis that we've already demonstrated is flawed? It's a terrible shame. So don't wipe it out, only to pay big bucks to get it back in 5 years. That's my last note. Thank you.
Or as a farmer from my district said, don't walk over $1 to pick up a dime. Well, it's very evident you're a fair and reasonable person, and very good to have you as the last speaker. Thank you both. To conclude today's hearing, I first want to extend appreciation to all of the witnesses, certainly to all of the folks that have testified, and to our representative from the department, Ms. Siggins, Chief Deputy Secretary, thank you, and your staff for having sat through the hearing, and we shall be corresponding with some follow-up inquiries. But we thank you for your participation. I think there's a great deal at stake involved in the programming decisions within the department. On the one hand, I respect the challenge faced by the department to absorb the budget reductions. And if you're looking for somebody to say who was responsible, I think the legislature has to own up to its responsibility. I think in prior years we should have set aside adequate amounts in a rainy day fund so we wouldn't find ourselves in this up and down budget cycle. But on the other hand, it's important to recognize that this was a compromise because the initial position by the administration was to wipe rehabilitation out entirely. So it's what was possible to keep this year. But on the other hand, I am very concerned about the decisions that that can and might be made to achieve some short-term savings, but may cause some longer-term problems that may wind up costing us more if we cannot reduce the recidivistic behavior, the revolving door of people being let go and then finding themselves back in the system. I agree wholeheartedly, which is why I supported sentencing reform and some other reforms in corrections, that folks are getting out every month, 10,000, 120,000 per year. And if we don't adequately address the underlying problems that led to them being in prison, whether it's substance abuse or unemployment or other criminal behavior, it really doesn't matter whether they're released before or after their sentence is completed. Many of these will reoffend and result in public safety, putting people's lives and property in jeopardy. I'm very concerned about the decisions that will be made, and especially as to how they impact educators, vocational instructors, counselors, and others who work with inmates, in addition to the personal and financial strain and stress this will place on a very dedicated group of employees. I'm concerned that the layoffs may hinder the department's ability to acquire and to retain qualified professionals far into the future once this present economic situation has been dealt with. I heard some recommendations on alternatives the department might consider, and we know that the overarching issue is money, but I think the stakes are too high for us not to keep looking at other options even at this late stage. So what I plan to do is work with the committee staff and discuss what we have heard this afternoon. I will certainly relay the gist of the testimony with my assembly colleagues and see what short and longer term actions might be feasible, and if possible to implement them as quickly as possible. So with that, once again, let me thank you for your interest and your concern on this very important matter, and with that, this meeting is adjourned.